Once again, this hour of the Jim Leach Show is brought to you by St. John's Hospital. We're continuing our look at the candidates in the key races in next week's election. Springfield School Board race is very important indeed. And in Subdistrict 3, there are 3 candidates on the ballot, 1 write-in candidate. One of the official ballot candidates, Jamie Sisti, the incumbent, could not join us this morning, but the other 2 are here with us, Blake Handley and Scott McFarland in studio. We'll continue our conversation now. I believe our next question will go first to Scott McFarland, and want to ask about Superintendent Walter Milton. Obviously, the school board hires the superintendent, has to oversee what the superintendent does. Your thoughts on the job that Dr. Milton has done at this point in his tenure? Scott McFarland.
Well, there are some areas that I agree with Dr. Milton, some areas I don't. I think that I like the fact that he is looking for new innovative approaches to do things. I like the idea of going to other districts and seeing what they've done well and seeing if that will mesh well with Springfield District. What I don't agree with him on is kind of the way decision-making processes are made. Again, I go back to the Feischens thing. Before even a discussion was had, the decision was made and released to the paper, and that's why we had such a big issue with that with the parents with that one, is because they weren't told about it beforehand. We need to stop doing the ready, aim, fire approach. We need to sit down, do community input, discussions with those involved, sit down with the school board, get discussions with them, and then once we've come to a consensus, we move forward. Then also, we need to start looking at the idea of making sure that our community has buy-in. It goes back to everything we've been saying. Without the community buy-in, we're not going to get the resources that we need.
Blake Handley, your thoughts on Dr. Milton's performance?
Yes, I believe Dr. Milton has done a wonderful job in what he has set forth. I wholeheartedly support the Capital College Prep program, and I think that will help to close the gap between the minority students and the other students that do well. As far as his communication with the board is the only thing that I somewhat have a problem with, going back to the Feischens thing, which we keep talking about. But the board wasn't informed, like Mr. McFarland said, of what was going on. And when the parents showed up at that meeting, they were very upset, and they had every right to be, because they were being told that their school was going to be closed down. And it made the board look like the bad people, when yet they didn't even know what was going on. So my only concerns with him are, he shouldn't be afraid to let the board know what he has in store.
You mentioned the achievement gap between minority students and white students, and actually largely between students who are not of financial means versus students who are more affluent. You talked about the Capital College Preparatory Academy as one way to address that. What are some other ideas that you have as far as closing that achievement gap?
Well, like I said, I wholeheartedly support the college prep program, but that's only 120 students out of 15,000. I think we need to instill that type of program in all of our middle schools and our high schools to help bring all these students together and instill what's being taught there to all the students, so they all have a chance and have the resources to progress in their education.
Now, when you say that, let me ask you to clarify, because obviously some of the things that go along with this, they have single-gender classrooms in the College Preparatory Academy. They've got uniforms. They've got all these different things. Are you saying that should be something that should be standard in every middle school, or should every middle and high school have a school within a school to do that? How would you implement that?
As far as the gender-based classes, that is already set in place in Jefferson Middle School also. I believe that we should be able to offer that in all of our middle schools: Franklin, Washington, Lincoln Magnet, Grant. As far as a school inside a school, no. I think it should be an open forum, or when you go in to register your daughter or your son, you should be given the opportunity to say, I want my daughter or son to be in an all-gender-based class, or, be able to be in these programs, these class settings that are more geared towards like an engineering or what they're trying to instill at the college prep program.
Do we have the resources, the teachers, and the space to do that and make that available for everyone?
From what I've understood, even with the closing of the Feischens thing, is that everybody has the adaptation to teach K through 9 or K through 8, whatever it is there. So as far as the classroom setting goes, we should have the teachers already available to teach what we have, because it's no different than what is being taught per se in the regular classroom, but they're focusing more on one thing than as far as the classroom as a whole.
Scott McFarland, again, the question is in general terms about how to close the achievement gap.
Yeah, real quick, I want to go back to the Feischens thing. Blake had mentioned that the Feischens decision made the school board look bad when the parents came in. It did because they didn't make the right move. When it comes down to it, when you have an agenda that's set, you can have a board member motion to amend that agenda to add those parents to the discussion. No board member made that motion. And I came out that night. Unfortunately, my press releases don't really get played up in the SGR too much, but I came out that night and said that if I was on the board, I would have moved to change the agenda to allow those parents to talk. And I'm glad that Jamie made the decision 2 weeks later to do that as well. When it comes to the achievement gap, there's no magic bullet. We're not going to be able to take Capital Academy and make it go district-wide. There's 120 students per grade, which we have 3 grades over there now. We're going to expand that. But we need to start looking at how we can ensure that all of our children get the education that they deserve. And it's not going to be a matter of one program is going to be district-wide. We need to look at each of our schools, our neighborhood schools, and make sure that they are getting the resources they need. So if a child wants to be an engineer, they shouldn't have to go halfway across town to take an engineering class. That class should be available to them at Lanphier, at Springfield, at Southeast. We need to work on ensuring that all of our students have the ability to succeed.
Can we do that in existing resources? Wouldn't that require a much bigger investment in teachers and maybe even in space, et cetera, to pull that off?
It is, and that's why we're not going to be able to do it right away, and there's no magic bullet to it. That goes back to my point that we need to look at our budget. We need to reduce redundancy, eliminate redundancy. We need to find cost savings, go in, and do the best we can with the funds we have, and then we need to go back to the community and say, again, we've now made it to where you see where this money's going. You see what we're doing. Here is what we need. Can you help us with either a sales tax, with whatever? We need your assistance.